Welcome to the Porn Reboot Podcast, where you get practical tips to gaining control over your porn or sex addiction. We help ambitious men end their out-of-control sexual behavior with pornography, sex, and masturbation so that you can maximize your life, perform at your potential, and remain in control in the driver's seat, which is where you have to be in order to gain or maintain the success you want in life. I'm your host, J.K. Emezi, certified sex and porn addiction recovery coach. Welcome to the episode. If you are a man struggling with a pornography addiction who has been diagnosed or who believes that he has some sort of disability, a learning disability, perhaps you are on the autism spectrum or suspect you are, then this is the episode for you. I'm not going to be speaking in the capacity of a mental health professional or anything like that. I'm just going to share my experience personally and working with clients over the years and my beliefs about what it takes to change your life and make sense of this behavior when you feel that you are in that category. And I'd like to begin by thanking the many men over the years who have trusted Elevated Recovery and the Porn Reboot program, especially when the rest of the world made them believe that their learning disability or the fact that they were on the spectrum meant that they were not going to be able to accomplish many things. Specifically, I'd like to thank an anonymous, they will always remain anonymous, gentleman who reached out recently. And I'm going to be using his email as an example because I think it's quite representative of a lot of the brothers who reach out. Now, I don't know the full context of this, gentlemen. I receive quite literally thousands of emails a week. This has been the same for many, many years. I'm not exaggerating this. A lot of back and forth that's happening. And for context, well over 1 million emails a month are sent out. We have a sizable email list of men who read my newsletter and who want to learn about ending this behavior. The emails I respond to are usually those from men who respond to jkemezi at elevatedrecovery.org. And if you put podcast in the subject line, I will know you are a podcast listener, which means you are usually very familiar with me and my system from listening to hundreds and hundreds of episodes. And I'm most likely to respond to that. But let's get into it. This gentleman says, in continuance of a conversation, he says, "Again, I ask, JK, is there simply no place for a man who isn't a quote-unquote high performer in Porn Reboot? I never was confident or socially adept, even before pornography. I'm mildly autistic and moderately learning disabled. How do you find a reason to quit in this scenario when you are in your 30s and never even had so much as a date? I would argue that it's far easier for one who has a relationship or has had them to quit successfully. That person has a reason. I and many others do not." Yeah, let's talk a little bit about this, Now, if you can relate to that, if you're like, man, I'm dealing with all of these things, JK, you don't understand. I've never had a date. I come from a different culture. I have a learning disability. It doesn't matter what it is. First of all, my job, my role, my mission is not to give you a reason to quit. There are many other people. Heck, if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts in the last couple of years, there are a lot of other podcasts that have popped up after mine where there are men and women talking about pornography addiction or sex addiction. They'll give you a reason to quit. That's not my job. I am not here to do that. That is not my mission. Listen, your lack of dates, your lack of sexual experience, your lack of confidence, your lack of social ability, either inborn, like you were born with it because you just don't have that ability and your brain is wired differently, your learning disability, whatever else it is, that makes up your story. Let's say your name is James and you're listening to this podcast. That is all part of the story of James. It's simply that. A story that you told yourself and others told you over and over, and now you use that to justify your pornography use. That is all it is, my brother. You were created a certain way. You were born a certain way. Certain things happen to you in your life in your life being from the moment you were a cell till the moment you were born as a human being, a full-fledged human being, or not even fully fledged. And all these things happen to you. They are who you are. But perhaps at some point in your life, you were not raised and you were not told that, hey, James, regardless of how you were raised, regardless of what happened to you as a child, regardless to what happened to your parents while you were still a cell, before your conception, during your mother's pregnancy, that may have affected your genetics, whether you believe in that or not. You have to accept that. That is the first step of stepping into any potential strengths that you have. If you are not, let's use the common terms right now. If you are not neurotypical, as they say, I'm not a neurotypical person. If you are not neurotypical, then you have no choice but to find a way to make it through this world. You may end up just surviving, or you may be fortunate enough to end up thriving. My suggestion, brother, is that you aim to thrive, but it is going to be difficult for you to do so if your measure of success and your measure of learning is based on those who are quote unquote neurotypical. One of the reasons why I believe many men follow this podcast is because within me, in things I may not have expressed, they see similarities. They hear stories. And even I, over the years, I don't think I even knew that I was expressing that in the stories. It's not just my experience as a man. It is the nuance of certain things that happen to me make men who may have some sort of learning disabilities or some certain type of trauma go like, whoa, 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 whoa. The way this guy is describing it emotionally, that experience is very similar to mine. I felt that way. I felt that loneliness. I felt that isolation. I felt all those different things. And that may have been what brought you here. But I want to tell you this. I did not go through life being able to figure things out the way normal people did. It is why therapy, it is why 12 steps, it is why many of these existing models in the world did not work for me. Neither did academia. They did not work for me. I had to find my own way. And what we have created here at Elevated Recovery and Porn Reboots is a system that is customized to you. Yes, we have men who are on the spectrum. Yes, we have men with all sorts of learning disabilities. This brother asked something. He said, do you have to be a high performer? Because you keep talking about high performer. Let me emphasize a different aspect of this whole high performer thing. And it's very important. I'm not just saying it as a gimmicky thing. I think the word high performing individual has become somewhat of a gimmick over the past few years. And I probably need to express it as something else because everyone is using it as some kind of marketing term when I'm quite serious about it. When somebody says like, oh, I have disabilities, I have all these issues, I'm held back in life, your disabilities do not have to be a reason for you to be unhappy. They're also not the cause of your pornography addiction. You can date, you can communicate, and you can do so much more. But like I said earlier, you have to do it differently from others. All the men in our program who have these quote unquote, let's say neurodivergent tendencies have one thing in common. And that thing is that their difference from other people, their disabilities, their whatever you want to call it, I'm not very comfortable with even using those words. They are no longer excuses. That's what differentiates them from you. The moment you accept that these are things in my life that I was born with, and I choose not to use them as excuses or reasons for not dating, for not having a job, for not making money, for not taking care of my health. The moment you do that, that is the only frame of mind from which you can highlight your strengths. And when you highlight your strengths for the first time ever, you're going to be able to change your identity and your self-image. This is how you become a high performer in spite of all these disabilities. There are so many examples of people who have leaned into the things that people said were their weaknesses. On the other side of this learning disability is something you had to do to compensate for it that is a stronger muscle. Somebody who is deaf might be better at observing things if they have sight. Somebody who does not have sight will likely be better at hearing if they can hear, and better at the sensation of touch, at their tactile ability. Similarly, we are very complex in our brains and in our way of perception. And if there's some way of perceiving the world that you do not have, let's say you do not have a verbal function, but you have a great written function. Let's say you do not have a great written function, but you have a great verbal function. Let's say you do not have a great ability with numbers, but you have a great ability with noticing patterns within human beings, then you will be able to highlight that. That is what I have done. Gentlemen, I cannot see many numbers. They're a jumble to me. I can barely read Excel sheets. Can't tell the time. My concept of time is completely gone. My ability and attention to detail is y'all read my emails. Y'all can tell when somebody has proofread them and when you're just like, oh, JK definitely sent that shit out. Do you know how long it takes me to proof an email? It takes hours. It takes me about 9-10 hours to write one out. People don't understand. But my ability to communicate, it was something I had to lean into in order to compensate for many of the other skills I did not have that in school made people look at me and go like, you're a little slow. There's something wrong with you. Until today, there are people who will show up to the podcast, show up to Elevated Recovery, hear me speak, and their discrimination and bias will kick in. Because they're like, well, he's not communicating the way a therapist should, the way a psychiatrist should. He's not doing that. And I don't give a fuck, gentlemen. Neither should you if you have something similar. Because this is what I had to do to survive. I don't care about the opinions of people who do not think that I am typical. I care about making my way in this world, sharing my gifts, and doing what I am here to do. This is all I have. I have nothing else except what God gave me to make a difference, to live a comfortable life, to do whatever it is that God, the universe, put us here to do. And the opinions of other people are irrelevant. Do you understand? The minute you stop making these your excuses, despite how difficult they are, is the moment your life will change. And if you're at the very least willing to consider that, then I am willing to have a conversation with you. One of the greatest joys that I have is when I can sit down and speak with a client who does not think like other people. But I do need one thing from that person, or else I will run out of patience. They have to be willing to change the way they think. Do not sit down with me. Like in this brother's email, he said, look, he was looking for a reason to quit. He's citing relationships. He's like, oh, we all don't have a reason. Listen, if you have listened to this podcast episode to this point, if you read any of my emails and respond, whatever it was that prompted you to respond, whatever it is that prompted you to get to this point while listening to me, my brother, that is your reason. That is it. I'm JK, your brother in this struggle. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Porn Reboot podcast. I'll speak to you later on in the week. If you found this episode helpful, here are 4 ways I can help you with your out-of-control sexual behavior for free. The first way is to grab a free copy of my book, Confessions of a Porn Addict, 7 Secrets of Porn-Free Men at elevatedrecovery.org, or visit the link in the description below this episode. The second way is, if you're not sure where to start, but you'd like to learn more about my team and I, if you'd like to spend time with like-minded professionals and business owners who are controlling their behavior, then join our free and confidential group, the Porn Reboot Group on Facebook. There's a link to join in the description below this episode. The third way is if you need help right now because you have a burning issue, your behavior with pornography is hurting you mentally or emotionally, you're about to lose your relationship, you want to live up to your potential, be an authentic man, and free yourself from shame, guilt, and underachieving, then click on the link in the description below this episode that says free coaching call. And the fourth way is to leave us a 5-star review if you enjoy this podcast, so that we can reach more men who are struggling in silence and bring back the lessons we learn from coaching them to freedom.